Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back today with another rewind edition of my podcast, and today I will be rewinding Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt. Now, this is his solo debut album from Jay-Z, one of the top 10 essential hip hop albums of all time, one of the strongest debut albums of in hip hop history. You have to put this alongside Nas's Illmatic, Biggie's Ready to Die, whatever solo album you want to put as a debut. This goes up there with it. I believe he has a top five debut album in hip hop history. I guess that's up for debate, but most people will tell you the same. Now, it's interesting that this album, as great as it was, debuted at number 23 on the U.S. Billboard charts. So that shows you how far hip hop has come as a genre, because now albums like that will be, top five, number one. They show more love to hip hop now, opposed to back then. This was in 1996. So back in 1996, hip hop was, it was fairly newer than it is now, of course, because it was only I think about 30, 40 years old. So didn't get a lot of respect. It was still the country, the pop music. Those things still got more love, which they still do to today, but hip hop is starting to gain more ground. But that album debuting at number 23 is insane to me. I never knew that until I looked it up. It was very interesting to see. But this album did a lot of things for hip hop going forward, and I will get into those right now. So Jay-Z was one of the first rappers to flaunt riches on his debut album. So it's commonplace now, and you're like, man, that's not really interesting. But it is when you think about it, because back in 96, like when you look at Nas's debut, or uh, Wu Tang, or any of these rappers, Big Daddy Kane, any of these rappers, they really didn't have riches so to speak. They all had these, you know, they had like regular clothes, and they really didn't flaunt cars. And if they did, it was probably rented or something. They really didn't have money like that. They had to earn it. Probably on their second and third albums they flaunted riches, but Jay-Z did it on his solo album. Of course, he did other things before rap, and he had money coming in. But he was one of the first artists I've seen to actually flaunt riches on their first album. Now, this album sold 1.5 million up to this point, which is another shocker for me, because I thought this album would have been several times platinum, but it's not. So it was a slept on album. I think a lot of people didn't catch on to later when they caught on, it was towards the streaming era and things like that. But back in 96, you had cassette tapes, you had CDs, you had radio play and things like that. So maybe it got lost in the shuffle somehow. But with the streaming era, I'm not sure where it's at right now. But that was physical sales, that 1.5 million. And he didn't even win a Grammy for this album as well, as great as it was. But he ended up winning a Grammy 3 years later for Volume 2, Hard Knock Life. This album was great too because of the producers on it. You had Clark Kent, rest in peace, DJ Premier, Irv Gotti, another rest in peace. All, were producers on this album, amongst others. But back then as well, there wasn't most producers on the albums. I think Biggie started doing that, and other artists started doing it maybe in the mid '90s, where they started using multiple producers. Usually, it was just only maybe one or two producers, but he used several on this album, which is another unique fact. But this album was a great collection of work. It started off with "They Can't Knock the Hustle" with Mary J. Blige, classic intro, one of the best intros in hip hop history. Jay Z was one of this album's was significant also because Mary J. Blige became a staple in hip hop history, not just because of being close proximity as an R&B artist, but most artists saw, if I had Mary J. Blige on a song on an album, I made it. It was a status symbol of some sort. Um, every artist started putting Mary J. Blige on a song, whether it was Method Man, or you go in the future, you had The Game, and you had any artist that you can think of that made it successful has a song with Mary J. Blige, and that's a staple as a rap artist. So I got a song with Mary J. Blige, I made it. Everybody's mom, grandma, aunties love Mary J. Blige. She always have these classic choruses and hooks that reel people in, that makes your song more attractive with the angelic voice that she have, and she has strong uh, contributions to hip hop, even as being an R&B artist. But back in the '90s, when she first came out, everybody had her own songs. She was the hot new thing, and she still is now. But she's more veered in acting now as opposed to singing. So she kind of, diversified her portfolio, so to speak. But and then you had Politics as Usual, another great Jay Z song. Then you got into Brooklyn Finest, which is another reason we needed the Commission album. But unfortunately, to Biggie's passing, we never got that. But that was just a glimpse. I Love the Dough is probably my favorite song between Biggie and Jay Z, even though they don't have a lot of tracks together. But that song was classic back and forth. And that's something else that Jay Z did as well as Biggie. They had this mafioso, braggadocious flow, which a lot of artists have emulated today, especially your Rick Rosses and others. They have taken that braggadocio, mafioso rap to the next level and expanded it throughout the genre. So they created, Jay Z pretty much created a subgenre for that mafioso type rap of being a boss. But Biggie created it. Jay Z took it to the next level, and Rick Ross and others, expanded on it. Because of course the times are different and the money is a lot different now than what it used to be in hip hop, and just artists veering off to different things, so they have a lot more money to do things. Um, the one of the best songs on the album though is "Feeling It," classic rapping over a piano beat with smooth rapping for lyrics from Jay Z. One of the classic lyrics, which I got on the thumbnail. Even if it ain't sunny, hey, I ain't complaining. I'm in the rain doing a $140 hydroplane. One of the classic lyrics from Jay Z. When I first heard the album and I heard that song, I fell in love with the music. Just I wasn't always a Jay Z fan because I was a Nas fan growing up, so I was kind of not listening to Jay Z. But when I finally started listening to Jay Z, it changed my whole perspective on things and taught me that you can listen to both artists. I don't have a personal vendetta in the beef or anything, but I just felt like Nas is better, and I still feel like Nas is better. But Jay has a lot of great lyrics, brings a lot of great music to hip hop and to the genre as well. The Evils, which was a sample song that they used from Murder Was the Case from Snoop Dogg's solo album Doggy Style. Very great song. I remember Lupe Fiasco referencing this song when he on Hurt Me Solo on his solo album, when he said he stopped listening to Jay Z for a while because he said he never prayed to God, he prayed to God. God bless me from the ungodly. That was when Lupe referenced that on Hurt Me Soul on Lupe's Fiasco's Food and Liquor. Very touching song that kind of talked about his, being transparent and open about his feelings about hip hop. But Jay Z did have a feature on the album on there, and very great song as well. Can I Live, which is, rest in peace to Irv Gotti, Irv Gotti produced track. He's listed as DJ Irv, which he used to go by back in the day. Um, like I said, classic beating song. It was, a lot of mafioso type rap in there, and just Jay Z flexing his muscles and flexing his rapping ability on that track. So a very great track. Anytime you could, Irv Gotti had those classic beats for that style of rap, and Jay Z and Irv Gotti was a great mix, and I wish they would have had a whole album produced just by Irv Gotti. The type of beats that he made, he didn't make beats often, but the beats that he made were classic. So rest in peace to Irv Gotti. And then lastly, I want to talk about the last track on the album, Regrets, um, where he says, "Make me want to holler back at the crib in the sauna, praying my people get bailed out like Time Warner." Probably the smoothest song on the album and the most purest and genuine hip hop on the album. But this album, like I said, gives you the feel of Illmatic or Ready to Die, one of those solo debut albums that just shows you the skill that was out back then, the skill set, and how people were hungry, didn't have anything, but they were fighting their ways out of the inner city and projects and bad situations, and how their skill set showed that it's not about where you are, but where you're going. And this album definitely showed you that about what they were able to do. But this Reasonable Doubt album was one of the best starts in hip hop. Jay Z got a lot of momentum off this, and to this day, the album is still controversial. Dame Dash, who was heavily involved in this album, owned a third of the album. He was selling the album, selling his third, and eventually got bought out, I believe. But Nevertheless, classic rap album. If you haven't heard Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, check it out. And then, as always, until next time, see you next time.